Hi, everyone. Welcome to LubGoesLive. My name is Mark Lubkowitz. I've been making videos for my students at St. Michael's College since the COVID-19 quarantine. And one of my favorite things to do in class is to go over what I call the featured allele of the day, which is really an exploration, celebration, and sometimes morning of human genetics. And so I thought what I would do is start a featured allele of the day series. And then I realized that not everyone out there really has maybe genetics on the cusp of their fingers. And so I'm going to try to roll through 4 big ideas in 4 minutes. I didn't practice, so I'm not sure I can actually pull it off in 4 minutes. But 4 big ideas in 4 minutes that should be a good enough primer for anyone who wants to follow the featured allele of the day to be in the game. Okay, without any further ado, let's look at the 4 big ideas of genetics. Let me first of all, as always, apologize and disclaimer to all my geneticist friends out there. I recognize this is a complete reduction sort of our field, and it is a little more complicated than that, but just going for the big picture here. So big idea number 1, DNA is a database. It stores information, just like your computer stores information. Your computer stores information in zeros and ones, what is called binary. DNA also stores information, but it does it chemically in adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, usually just called A, T, C, and G. It stores information. All databases have to be organized, have some sort of structural overlay. Your DNA, the organizational unit, one of the organizational units is called the gene. What do genes do? Genes are nothing more than blueprints for proteins. And proteins are the worker bees of the cell. They do the work. If you walked into your kitchen this morning, you smelled something, there are proteins involved. If you're working out, there are proteins involved. If you are breaking down fat or making fat, there are proteins involved. It's happening in a cellular context, in a physiological context, almost always, directly or indirectly, it involves proteins. Okay, so without getting too wonky about the chemistry of DNA, let's just look here for a second at double-stranded DNA. So remember, it's a database for proteins. It is a blueprint. It is going to get copied through a process called transcription to make RNA. RNA is just a copy of what eventually will be translated and into the protein, which then does the work of the cell. All right, second big idea. We may have all the same genes, but we don't necessarily have the same versions. Okay, so step back for a second. With the exception of the sex genes that are found in males and females, every human being has the same genes in the same order on the same chromosomes. Let me say that again. With the exception of the sex chromosomes, we all have the same genes in the same order on the same chromosomes. So why do we differ genetically? Well, just because we have the same genes doesn't mean that we have the same versions of those genes. And the analogy that I always like to use is shoes. So different versions of the same gene is called an allele. So I'm going to start off with a generalist allele here. So this is a Vans shoe. This would be a great shoe, let's say, for a casual work environment. You may even be able to pull it off in fine dining. You could jog in it. You could wear it to the beach. It would be very appropriate for the skate park. It wouldn't be perfect at any of those, except for maybe the skate park, but it would be good enough. On the other hand, let's say that you have a different version, a different allele of a shoe that looks like a ski boot. This is a great allele if you are downhill skiing. And let's say we have another allele over here. This one looks like a water shoe, once again, different version of a shoe, different version of a gene. This one is a great allele if you're in the water. So what's the perfect allelic combination? Well, it depends upon the environment. So if you are going swimming, the water shoes work great. If you're climbing a mountain, not so well. If you're at the beach and you're wearing ski boots, don't go swimming. It's not going to end well. Strong selective pressure. All right, so how does that play out at the molecular level? Now, there are many, many ways to generate alleles at the molecular level, but the most common way in which alleles are evolved is through what are called SNPs, which stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. So let's say that we have our 2 alleles, the gray shoe and the blue shoe, and what I want you to notice is that they have the same nucleotides, like they look a lot alike, except for this one region right here, and that's the SNP, the single nucleotide polymorphism. So the one place they differ is the SNP. So most of the genetic or the molecular differences between any 2 individuals, not the only, but the primary driver of differences is going to be at the SNP level. And in fact, that company 23andMe, if you're familiar with them, the way they genotype individuals is they don't look at all differences because that would be really hard. They just look at the known SNPs. And based upon that, they can calculate certain outcomes or not. All right. Now, in my world, with some exceptions, because it's biology, I like to say it's probabilistic most of the time. It's not deterministic. What that means is, let me just give you an example. One of my pet peeves is when you hear a headline that says, "Today, scientists discovered a gene that causes," and I think that's just not true. It would be accurate if they said, "Today, scientists discovered an allele for a gene that every human being has that changes your probability of getting X by a certain percentage." Okay, so most of the times, not always, for example, cystic fibrosis, it is deterministic, not probabilistic. But most of the time, we think about phenotypes like cancer, heart disease, athleticism, hypertension. Those are going to be a combination of both the alleles, and it's going to be really, really complicated, dozens and dozens of genes, each contributing, as well as the environment. Okay, and any given one of those is going to push your probability right or left by a certain percentage. So it's not deterministic, it's probabilistic. And remember, the environment matters a lot. Okay, so those are the 4 big ideas. That's what I got for you today. I think that will launch you into the allele of the day, so you can follow along and celebrate human genetics with my molecular genetics class. See you next time. Bye.